From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mystery and Fiction Tent. My name is Maureen Corrigan. I'm a regular reviewer for the Washington Post and also the book critic for NPR's Fresh Air. Thank you. Thank you. The Washington Post has been a sponsor of the book festival since its inception 10 years ago. And all I can say is they promised us it would be cooler today, and they lied. But your presence is a testament to our collective love and enthusiasm for good books. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today novelist Anchee Min. Anchee Min's books explore the inner lives of women whose work has changed the perception and, in some cases, the history of modern China. I had the good fortune to review Miss Min's book, Becoming Madame Mao. She's gone on to write books about the Last Empress of China, book of the same name, and her latest book is called Pearl of China. It's about the American writer Pearl S. Buck, who was born in China. So because it's hot, without further ado, I will introduce to you Anchee Min.
Thank you again, Maureen. I can't believe I'm here. I'm alive, and I'm speaking English. It's such a wonderful moment. It reminds me of the moment that I landed in America, 1984, August 31st, and I got caught at the custom because I didn't speak English, and they found out that I came here to study in college. I faked because I was accepted by the Art Institute of Chicago with my artworks, and they didn't know that I didn't speak a word of English. And the officer says, "So welcome to America," and I prepare the answer, say thank you, and he flipped my passport, and he started to say things, ask me something, and in my ears I heard, and I say, thank you. After the third thank you, he pointed at the back room. That's a deportation room. And I just broke down as I made it here. I was 27 years old, and came out of the labor camp. I know I don't deserve it, but please give me a chance. I will learn English in 3 months. If I don't, I deport myself. So I thank you, America, for giving me a chance. I'm so glad that. Thank you. So much was given to me, especially the American citizenship, and I feel that so much is expected of me, and the best thing I could repay the kindness of this country is to provide what I know. And I think it's important for America to know that the relationship with America and China, and right now it's so crucial to our survival and understanding. So I started, I write Red Azalea was my autobiography, and that was easy because it was about my life as a nobody. It's to give you a little bit idea about how our generation grew up in China, and the people like me who rule China, especially women, the unwanted. And today, we support the half of the sky in China. And then after Red Azalea was Madame Mao. And to make a long story short, I got picked by Madame Mao for her propaganda film right after, it was before Mao died in 1976. Madame Mao tried to make this propaganda film to feature a female proletarian image. And I was hoeing weeds in the cotton field in the labor camp, East China Sea, and got picked. And I was brought to Shanghai Film Studio to learn acting. Turned out I was a very lousy actress. but I was taught to write, to drink water correctly, the proletarian style. But then soon, before the film was into production, Madame Mao, Mao died, and 2 months later, Madame Mao was arrested and was sentenced to death. And I was considered Madame Mao's trash. So I stood no chance in China. And after 8 years of punishment, I came to America. So between those 8 years, I learned firsthand. Now I was understage when people who were prosecuted by Madame Mao in the jails, they were released, they come onto the stage, tell the story why they were punished by Madame Mao and what they knew. So I learned all these. I never dreamed that would be my first-hand material to write about becoming Madame Mao. And after that was history of the Qing dynasty, starting with Empress Orchid, the last empress of China, the woman who was a girl from a poorest village in China, Anhui, became the ruler of China for 50 years. And I feel that to learn about where China is going, we must know where China is coming from. So I was very pleased when this book was nominated for a British Book Award, reader's favorite pick. I get to sit with Harry Potter's author, J.K. Rowling. I did not know who J.K. Rowling was. And I was tossing this invitation in the trash can, and when my daughter, she's here, being my co-presenter, she says, no, you are going to England. You're gonna get an autograph from me. So J.K. Rowling says, so you're here. I said, I am getting autograph for my daughter. How old is she? I said, 12 years old. She said, I know how they like. So she wrote something very special for me, and I brought home, I got the respect from my daughter. And in Empress Orchid, well, I'm going to talk about that later. I'm going to talk about Pro of China. The reason I wrote about this because I realized that China started to realize how nobody else gave Chinese peasants a voice except this American author. The voiceless Chinese, still nobody taught her, but we did not know. I was ordered to denounce Pol Pot, 1971. I was in Shanghai Middle School, 14 years old. It was right before Nixon's visit to China, 1972. Madame Mao was giving this campaign to convince the nation that Pol Pot was an American cultural imperialist, that she hates Chinese people. I wish that I was giving a book, The Good Earth, to read, so I know what I was denouncing about. Of course, I was not given a chance. So I asked the teacher what I should do. The teacher says, copy the newspaper. So I copied the newspaper and denounced her. And the next chance for me to encounter the name Pol Pot was after I moved to America and wrote Red Azalea and was giving a talk at the bookstore in Chicago. When a reader came up, she says, do you know the name Pol Pot? Before I could explain, and this person says, I just want to let you know that Pol Pot taught me to love Chinese people. And I thought, really? And she said, here is a book, is my gift to you. And that was The Good Earth. So I finished the book on the airplane from Chicago to Los Angeles. I broke down because I never read anybody, including my favorite Chinese authors, who wrote about our peasants the way Pol Pot did, with such admiration, affection, and humanity. So it was at that very moment the idea for a book, Pro of China, was born. I'm going to, since time's very pressed, I'm going to ask my daughter to read 30-second, 1-minute paragraph from the book. I intend to talk about the story about Pol Pot's 40 years life in China from a Chinese peasant. So it's a story about the whole village town of Zhenjiang. Lorianne, please.
Chapter 1. Before I was Willow, I was Weed. My grandmother, Nene, insisted that naming me Weed was better. She believed that the gods would have a hard time making my life go lower if I was already at the bottom. Papa disagreed. Men want to marry flowers, not weeds. They argued and finally settled for Willow, which was considered gentle enough to weep and tough enough to be made into farming tools. I always wondered what my mother would have thought if she had lived. And now I'm going to read you an excerpt from page 60. Pearl and I walked the outskirts of town, where someone was getting married. We joined the children who had been invited to the wedding to help inspire fertility. We were given nuts and seeds to throw at the new couple. The groom was a young peasant who was already drunk. He meant to thank the guests, but instead he threw up. The bride was dressed in a bright red embroidered costume. Her face was covered with a piece of silk. Pearl and I admired the costume and the bride's glittering hair ornament. When the band started the wedding song, we joined in. Buddha sits on a lotus pad, beautiful fingers orchid-like. Sun goes down and moon comes up. May your life be peaceful and tranquil. Mud walls and straw pillows, fruit seeds and many suns. Happiness and longevity. May your life have the spring and all its fair weather. Thank you.
I choose that paragraph, that poem, and the lyrics of the opera, the peasant opera, because it's not Peking opera, it's for poor peasants. And Lorianne and I are gonna treat you and entertain you at the end of my presentation with that peasant opera, which is Probach's favorite. Then I went on after Realizélia and wrote other books, and also Becoming Madame Mao. I was inspired that moment. You see, my grandmother had bound feet, so was Madame Mao. And Madame Mao was such a character who was an early feminist, who torn up her foot-binding cloth to went to Yan'an to marry Mao for 38 years and become this monster, the murder for millions of people during the Cultural Revolution. And I was very interested in this transformation of this woman. And the moment I was really inspired was that moment when Madame Mao was put in front of the Chinese TV when she was sentenced to death. And she shouted, she says, 我是主席的狗，主席让我咬谁我就咬谁. I'm Mao's dog. Mao asked me to bite, I bit. She was so much in love with Mao, and she died willingly for love. Oh, I leave the rest to you to read the book. Now, the next one was this Empress Orchid, Cixi. Again, see, the Chinese women are so have such a strength because of this being put like you have no way out but being strong and save yourself. So this empress, who was one of the 3,000 women selected to go to the Forbidden City to be the empress mating partner, but the emperor never hardly get to them. And the woman between them, 17, 18 years old, fighting, and there's one woman from the poorest village, have the best wits, had nothing to lose, and won the empress' heart. And here I'm going to read this paragraph and how she bribed the chief eunuch for her one night in bed with the emperor. And what pleases me the most, I get to play this evil character, eunuch chief Shen, and Lorianne is going to play the Orchid. Could you, please? Lady Yehonala, you needn't to be so formal. As your slave, Shem does not deserve such respect. I don't mean to criticize, but Lady Yehonala, you should be careful. You can get both of us in trouble.
Sorry. I am desperate, Chief Shem. Please rise and have a seat. I have a humble gift for you.
This This is His Majesty's engagement gift to you, Lady Yehonala. It is an authenticated piece, a pledge. If you don't know its value, allow me to
I am glad you recognized its value. However, I would still like you to have it.
Why, Lady Yehonala, why?
I'd like to exchange it for a favor. To tell you the truth, this Rui is the last thing I own. I want you to have it because I understand the value of your help.
Lady Yehonala, please, I cannot accept it.
Rise, Chief Shen.
I dare not.
I insist.
But Lady Yehonala,
The Rui will be more valuable when I become the mother of Emperor Xianfeng's child.
yes, Lady Yehonala.
Thank you for helping me.
Which date, my lady, would you like me to schedule you with His Majesty?
Does the date make a difference?
Big difference, my lady. You want to see His Majesty on your most fertile days, don't you?
That's right.
And the date is
The 14th day of the next full moon.
perfect. My lady, I will mark the date in my book right away. If you don't hear from me, we are set. You will be summoned on the 14th day of the next full moon. Until then, my lady.
Wait. Chief Shim, please bear with my questions. What if His Majesty wants to see other ladies on that day? How can you make him want me instead?
Don't worry, my lady. I have a way to bend the wind in the Forbidden City.
And that is to say,
And that is to say, if Emperor Xianfeng expresses a desire to see any other lady, for example, Lady Li, I will say to him, Your Majesty, Lady Li is unclean.
what about Lady Mei?
I'm sorry, Your Majesty, Lady Mei is unclean too.
So you will have everyone have their cycle except the one you want to sleep with the Emperor?
Yes, I have succeeded many times. Thank you. Now I'm going to talk about a little about how I become an author. I was thrilled, of course, with giving an entrance to America, and spoke no English, and I tried to survive and knowing nobody. So I finally I started learning English from Sesame Street and public radio, and of course the library. And I learned to read the classics, classify the ads, since I didn't speak English, and I was reading really carefully. And then one day I found a job. It was a guinea pig for medical drug trials. And it says no English skill necessary. I was thrilled. I went up there and I said, I'm here. I'm healthy, I'm willing, and I would love the opportunity. And they say, sure. They look at me and examine me, and they say, now sign a contract. I sign. I don't read it. I just sign. They say, no. You have to read and you understand what you're signing. And I lost the job. So but I was not discouraged. My second job was try to carry my legs as far as my legs can carry me to look for a Chinese waitressing job in Chicago. So I walked around on Michigan Avenue and in downtown, but nobody wanted me. And eventually, I got a job outside of Chicago in Libertyville, a Chinese restaurant. So I was having 3 jobs by now. So I would work from afternoon 4 o'clock to 11 p.m. My waitressing, and the second job was from after I got back, were like starting 12 a.m. All the way to 3 p.m. 3 a.m. Working on Chinese brush painting on women's underwear for 50 cents a piece. Oh, my time. Okay. So my first, I learned English. I was so happy because that day I get to communicate with the customer. I say, may I take your order? And he says, yes. I was thrilled. I loved my boss, although she's like, if I walk fast, she's behind me, the Chinese restaurant, she says, the house is not on fire. So I slow down with the tray with 6 plates, and the boss says, I didn't hire you to be a lazy bone. But I like it because you see, she put every criticism on the table. So you know what you're criticized about and you can improve. But in China, I don't even get that. You never know what you did wrong. I didn't know what I did wrong. I just had this proletarian face, all of a sudden became a trash. So I was enjoying life. And after that, I was giving so I wanted to promote myself. From a waitressing, my dream was to be a secretary. So I can get on the phone, speak English. And my moment of fame would be, hello, how can I help you? So, and they told me that I need to learn typing. So I couldn't afford a typewriter, so I went to the Payless Shoes next door and I asked for an empty box. And I took the box and went to the school, had the school secretary mark the letters, which finger goes to which, and I practiced typing on my way from Chicago Union Station on the train to Libertyville. And then 2 months later, I went for the typing test, ready, set, go. I scored -13. So I didn't get to that. But then I started writing. I think I need to improve my English in order to be a secretary. And I didn't have the money, so I was waiting at the elevator. And when people goes up, I say, which floor? If they say 2nd floor, I don't follow. If the person says 10th floor, 8th floor, I follow. And I say, following, I say, can you tell me if this have been or has been or had been? So that's the manuscript of Red Azalea. And my teacher at the school says, you're such a lousy writer, but you have wonderful material. So that's how I started. And then I asked the teacher, so can you recommend me a book that's a wonderful author? And he recommended me his own book. and I have to thank him. If he gave me Virginia Woolf's book, I probably never would have had the guts. So to conclude my presentation, I like to play a 3-minute peasant opera, because this is the Pearl Buck's favorite. This is how I feel. Pearl Buck did not get to China because Madame Mao rejected her visa to China to accompany President Nixon, and she would have been standing in between Mao and Nixon, being the picture of history. But Madame Mao wanted that spotlight for herself. And I learned from Pearl Buck's daughter that a few days before her death, she stood in her China window at her home in Pennsylvania. She had this window that outside is like the Chinese view. And I know that myself, Pearl Buck was living in China for 40 years, America for 40 years, and I was in China for 27 years, here in 27 years. I understand that when you are in a way uprooted, and your roots, I think Pearl Buck said so many times, my root in China must die. It means how so hard. And I went to, when I read the last paragraph on Pearl Buck, Pearl of China, because that was my character, Willow's experience, I purposely left it undone until I visited the grave. When I saw Pearl Buck's grave, I just fall apart, because on her gravestone, there was nothing but Sai Zhenzhu, her Chinese name. So China was on her last thought. And her daughter says, a few days before her death, she leaned on the window and looking out in her bright red Chinese embroidered flower, the gown. So I feel that she missed China so much and didn't get to enjoy it here. Me and my daughter come to her home and bring the sound of her childhood to her spirits. So that's why I'm singing to you today. And I want you to know that the Chinese poor people love the opera. This is what my grandmother told me, that because in the opera, we get to escape the life we were living, and only through singing the opera we get to be the hero and heroine. And the only thing that bothers me is that I personally have been out of practice for so long, although it's in my blood. And my daughter, she's American-born, and hardly tried to get into her Chinese. And she's into, American teenagers, American-born. And now she grew up with this, the iPod. You can never communicate with her. And, they don't, yo, like that, right? How do you do that? How do you do that? Get up and do that. So I can't, you imagine, it's so hard to you try it. To take the Coca-Cola soda and the candy out of American children. But anyway, I drilled her. I said, you're going to come here to perform, and you're going to deliver quality performance. And she said, well, the last thing she wanted to do is to be an author, because it's so difficult. She would come and check me on my cabin when I'm writing. In my isolation, she found that 2 weeks before I was writing on this paragraph, 3 weeks later on the same paragraph. She decided it was so terrible that she made herself to Stanford. This year, she's a freshman in Stanford, and thank you. And study medicine, because I told her, you're going to help me to pay back to this country. You either be a plumber or a doctor. So she decided to be a doctor. Come here. Well, she corrects me all the time, English. You can tell your story about. I said, don't hit me. My bones already what?
Brutal.
Yeah, I said, my bones is already brutal. Don't hit me. She said, brittle. Anyway, I think her voice is not good enough to present you the opera. However, I thought, what the heck? The American audience wouldn't know the difference. So this piece, it's called Happily Going Home. It's about peasants, about having fun building their good life, just doing the peasant work. For example, this is like a cultivate, plant, seed, and this is sowing, and this is carry manure. So we're gonna do that. It's called Happily Going Home. All right.
树上的鸟儿成双对，
绿水青山带笑颜，
随手摘下花一朵。
我与娘子戴发间，
从今不再受那奴与苦，
夫妻恩爱把家还。I'm sorry.
你跟天来，我织布。
我挑水来，你浇园。
寒鸟随破南北风雨，
夫妻双双把家还。
你我好比鸳鸯鸟，比双飞在人间。
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Are you going to do questions or not? Is the question and answer session? No question.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.